Hi everyone, this is RVindas from Group 2 in FS 575 reporting out on my final phase of my course project, which was to decrease grocery spending. To give you a little bit of background into the entire project, the problem statement was that our family is spending too much money on groceries for our size and needs. So again, our size is 2 adults, a dog, and 2 cats. Now, pre-improvement, we were spending an average of $7.70 per month on groceries, or that's about $4.30 per meal per person. That's taking into account 2 adults, 3 meals per day, at an average 30 days per month. So the project goals were numerically to reduce our grocery spending by about 40% and habitually to develop better budgeting habits. So the numeric goal would be to reduce our grocery spending by about $300 per month, or about $170 per person per meal. That would put us at a monthly spending average of about $470 per month and cost per person per meal around $260. So as you remember from my past couple of presentations, the root causes of our overspending were determined to be 2. So a bad or incomplete inventory completed at home prior to going grocery shopping, and no use of a weekly menu, and these 2 were very related to each other. Now, the improvements that we implemented were directly addressing the root causes that we found via our root cause analysis tools, and the ones that we used were the fishbone diagram, the 5 whys analysis, and FMEA. So we implemented a better inventory of our items at home. That included giving ourselves enough time to complete that inventory instead of rushing through it, so that we're making sure that we're doing a complete inventory. And also using a dry erase board to help us keep track of the things that we need in real time when they go missing. Now, this board is put up in our kitchen as well, and you can see an example of that board on the right-hand side of your screen. We also started using a weekly menu. So in addition to just choosing great recipes that use very simple or ingredients that we have readily available, we also put this menu on our dry erase board that we're using to help us with our inventory. So because we know that having better inventory practices leads to our sticking to the menu much more frequently. So I need to compare my data to see if these improvements were actually effective. So here's a data comparison plan for this final phase. The goal for this plan is the same as it has been for the past couple of presentations, so just looking to see if those improvements were effective. And I have 4 different metrics that I'll be showing you throughout this presentation. The first is the total amount spent per week, and I'll show you that via an IMR control chart. And then we'll also be looking at the total amount spent within each category for the collection time frame using a Pareto diagram, so we can see which categories drive the most spending. And then we'll also be using a one-factor ANOVA, looking at the total amount spent on groceries per week before and after implementing our weekly menu, which is the treatment there. And then the last one isn't truly using a quality tool, but it's going to be the way that I compare my data pre and post improvement to show if there was a % improvement and how much that was. So we'll be looking at the amount spent on average per week, per month, and per person per meal. Jumping right into the IMR control charts, I have them stacked on top of each other with the I chart on top and the MR chart on bottom. So looking at the IMR charts here, you can see that the time frame is the entire time frame that I've been collecting data. So that's beginning of March up until the beginning of December here. And just so you know, the improvements were implemented in week 34, which is noted on the x-axis of each chart here. So we'll start by looking at the I chart, which is looking at our actual weekly amount spent on groceries. And ever since we implemented our improvements in week 34, you can see that the data points have been either well below the central line or really close to the central line. So it seems like we have a trend here that we're trending near a new central line in this specific chart. Now, the process, as you know, haven't collected enough data points at this point to know if the process is stable yet, so we really can't calculate new control limits at this point. The MR chart as well, which shows us our variability between the prior week and the current week, is also showing much less variability since our improvements were implemented, which is great because that means that we're spending a more consistent amount per week. And that means that we go into the grocery store knowing what we're looking for and knowing what we need. Next, I'll jump into the one factor ANOVA. So again, our treatment was the use of our weekly menu, and we could have chosen either the inventory or the menu. We implemented them at the same time, so I just went with the weekly menu. The number of treatments were 2. Either we used a weekly menu or we didn't. And the number of samples per treatment as of this last week were 8. So that means that we had 8 weeks of post-improvement. That's 2 months worth of post-improvement data there. So our null hypothesis is that the use of the weekly menu doesn't have an effect on the amount spent on groceries per week. So via the ANOVA calculations, we found that our F0 value was 6.0346. And if alpha equals 0.05, as it has been throughout this course, our F critical value at f.0518 equals 5.3177. The rejection criteria is that F0 has to be greater than F alpha 18. So because F0 is greater than F alpha 18, we can reject our null hypothesis. That means that our weekly menu does have an effect on the amount that we're spending on groceries per week. So it's very encouraging. Here is our diagram showing the amount spent per grocery category during our data collection time frame. So it's the same as what we had going on previously in our charts, but we're only looking at post-improvement data here. So really, I know that I haven't been using these diagrams necessarily to drive improvement, but these are important for the sustainability of this project. So I really wanted to understand which category was really contributing the most so that we can apply a focused effort. And it's obvious using this diagram that meat and seafood is the category that we spend the most in. To be clear, I'm not very surprised about this because I know that we spend a lot on high quality meat. That's very important to us. We like organically raised or humanely raised meat as much as possible, and so we do tend to spend more here. But I think if we focus our efforts a little bit more on this category, we'll be able to bring down our spending here. So, did I meet my goal? That's one of the most important parts of this phase of the project, is understanding if I did that. So first of all, we'll look at the average weekly amount spent. So pre-improvement was spending almost $176 per week on groceries. Post-improvement, spending about $102 per week. That's awesome. That's about a 42% improvement. So that's a big green smiley face. And then the average monthly amount spent, we were about $781 per month pre-improvement. Post-improvement, we're around $490, which is really great as well. That is a 37% improvement. So I've got a little yellow smiley face here because that doesn't quite hit our initial numerical goal of about a 40% reduction, but it's super close. So I consider that a win. And then looking at the average cost per meal per person, this was calculated using the monthly grocery spending data. So we got the same percent improvement here. Again, extremely close to that numerical goal that we had. So considering this a win as well. So in conclusion, I feel like my goal is accomplished. Based on the data that I've seen and the actual changes I've seen in our finances, I'd say that this project was a success. Now, what did I learn throughout this project? So root cause is very, very important. When I initially started this project, I thought I already knew what was driving our big spending, and I wanted to blame the actual individual categories within our grocery spending and say, yeah, we're spending way too much money on produce or too much money on meat. And sure, we might have been doing that before, but the true root cause of this whole thing was that we weren't actually taking a good inventory of the things that we had at home. And we weren't using a weekly menu. We were just going to the grocery store pretty much blind. I mean, with a list, but we didn't know what we were going to use those items for. They didn't have purposes necessarily lined up yet. So that really contributed to our overspending. Another learning was that the process isn't stable yet. So we know that we need at least 15 data points after our process is stable to calculate the control limits on our control chart. And I did recalculate my limits using my post-improvement data just for fun. And I had so many out of control data points that I noticed that my process just wasn't stable enough to recalculate yet. If I would have recalculated using my data points, had to pull out the out of control ones, I wouldn't have had anything left over. Another important thing is to keep your receipts. That really helped keep us accountable this whole time, is really seeing what we were truly buying. Also, setting aside time for budgeting is really important. It's an important part of life of being an adult, and it definitely pays off. So my plan for continuous improvement is to keep looking at those grocery spending categories to see if there's any opportunity for improvement. And I already noted that meat and seafood, I think we can improve there because it's a huge driver. It's a huge bucket of what we're spending per week, and I think there's some opportunity there. I'll also be applying this methodology to our next high spending category, which is restaurants and entertainment. So we have all this food at home, but we keep going out to eat. So I think we need to hone in on that as well. So thank you very much, FS575, for walking through this project with me. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.